They don't tell you what to do when your enemy is your sister, especially when she's sitting at her own wedding, glowing next to the man who was supposed to be your husband. As I stood and tapped my fork against a champagne flute, a hush fell over the grand ballroom. All eyes were on the bride, my sister Lucy, and the groom, my ex-fiancé Richard. Lucy's practiced smile tightened. She expected a few sweet words before I faded away. But I wasn't there to toast their happiness. I was there for a reckoning. I took a deep breath. "I'd like to make a toast," I began, my voice surprisingly steady, betraying the seismic tremor in my soul. "To the happy couple, to Lucy and Richard." Richard wouldn't look at me. He stared intently at the pristine, white tablecloth, his knuckles white where he gripped his own glass. Good. He should be ashamed. "It's a funny thing, fate," I continued, a bitter smile touching my lips. "Just over a year ago, I was standing in a different dress, planning a different wedding. To a different groom? No, actually, to the very same groom." A collective gasp, soft but audible, rippled through the room. I saw my mother's eyes widen in horror, her silent plea screaming across the sea of guests. "Don't you dare, Ava." But I was already over the edge, and the fall was the only thing that felt real anymore. Lucy's face had gone rigid, her smile frozen into a horrifying rictus of disbelief and fury. The perfect bride was cracking. "You see?" I said, my voice gaining strength, each word a stone I was finally allowed to throw. "My sister, my perfect, beautiful, beloved sister, has always wanted everything I've ever had." But it wasn't enough for her to just want it. She had to take it, to conquer it, to leave me with nothing but the ashes. I locked eyes with her then, daring her to deny it. She didn't just want my fiancé. She wanted my ruin. She seduced him, manipulated him, and broke him, all while comforting me and telling me I'd find love again someday. She orchestrated the end of my life as I knew it, and then, with breathtaking cruelty, she built her dream wedding on its foundations. The silence in the room was no longer just quiet. It was a living entity, vast and suffocating. Lucy was ashen, her mask of perfection shattered into a million pieces at her feet. "So, no, I don't wish you a lifetime of happiness," I said, my voice thick with the unshed tears of a year of agony. "I wish you exactly what you've given me. And I wish for everyone here to know the truth. The real you, Lucy. The monster hiding behind the perfect smile." But to truly understand why I stood there today, a ghost at the feast of my own stolen future, we need to rewind to where it all began. Back to a lifetime lived in the shadow of a sister who was an expert in the art of emotional destruction. Growing up, Lucy was the sun and I was the satellite, my orbit fixed around her gravitational pull. She was 2 years older, and in our family's eyes, 2 decades wiser, prettier, and more accomplished. I was shy Ava, sensitive Ava, while she was brilliant Lucy, go-getter Lucy. Our parents weren't cruel, they were just captivated. They saw in Lucy a reflection of their own aspirations, a flawless daughter who hit every mark with effortless grace. They loved me, I suppose, but it was the kind of love one has for a quiet, predictable houseplant. Lucy was the prize-winning rose they paraded at every opportunity. The sabotage started early, so subtly that for years, I believed I was the problem. I was clumsy, unlucky, not trying hard enough. When I was 10, I spent a month painstakingly building a diorama of the solar system for the school science fair. It was my masterpiece, complete with cotton ball nebulae and tiny hand-painted planets suspended on fishing line. The night before it was due, I went to bed dreaming of a blue ribbon. The next morning, I found it crushed, a small, apologetic note from Lucy on my desk saying she'd tripped in the dark while getting a glass of water. My parents praised her for her honesty, while I choked back tears and took a failing grade. In high school, I was nominated for student council president. I was terrified, but also thrilled. For the first time, I felt seen by my peers. I spent weeks preparing my speech, practicing in front of the mirror until my voice was hoarse. The day of the election, my speech cards vanished from my locker. I stumbled through my presentation from memory, fumbling my words, my face burning with humiliation. I lost, spectacularly. 2 weeks later, I found my speech cards tucked away in the back of Lucy's closet while looking for a board game. When I confronted her, she just laughed it off. "Oh my God, Ava, I borrowed your backpack that day and they must have fallen in. You're so dramatic." It wasn't a big deal. But it was a big deal. It was my chance, and she had snuffed it out with casual indifference. She never left a scar that could be seen. Her cruelty was a slow-drip poison, administered with a smile and a plausible excuse. She'd give me terrible fashion advice before a date, telling me I looked quirky and unique, when she really meant I looked ridiculous. She'd accidentally mention my deepest insecurities to people I was trying to impress. "Ava's just a little sensitive about her acne," she'd say in a stage whisper, ensuring everyone heard. Each incident was small, deniable. Complaining about them only made me look petty and jealous, a narrative she carefully cultivated. I was the ungrateful sister, unable to be happy for her perfect sibling. So I learned to make myself smaller. I stopped trying for things. I avoided the spotlight she so desperately craved, seeking refuge in books and quiet corners. I built walls around my heart, convinced that anything I cherished would eventually be targeted, tainted, or taken by Lucy. My self-esteem, already fragile, crumbled into dust. I floated through my late teens and early 20s in a haze of anxiety and depression, a background character in my own life story. And then I met Richard. I wasn't looking for anyone when Richard entered my life. I was working a dead-end admin job at a small accounting firm, living in a tiny apartment that felt more like a bunker. I met him at a local coffee shop where I'd go to read. He was a landscape architect, and he'd sit by the window, sketching designs in a large notepad. For weeks, we just exchanged shy smiles. I was too intimidated to ever speak to him. He was handsome, with kind eyes and a laugh that seemed to fill the whole room. He was a sun, and I had learned to fear the sun. One afternoon, I dropped my book, and the pages scattered under his table. He knelt to help me, his hand brushing mine as he passed me a handful of pages. "The Count of Monte Cristo," he said, a warm smile spreading across his face. "A story of epic revenge." "I'm more interested in the part about finding treasure and a new life," I confessed, my face flushing. That was the beginning. Our conversation started over coffee and soon stretched into long dinners. With Richard, for the first time, I didn't feel like a satellite. I felt like a star in my own right. He wasn't just listening to me, he was hearing me. He saw the person hiding behind the walls I'd so carefully constructed. He found my quiet nature peaceful, not boring. He thought my sensitivity was a strength, a sign of my depth and empathy. He was patient and gentle, slowly coaxing me out of my shell. He encouraged me to take a pottery class, something I'd always wanted to do. When I brought home my first lopsided, misshapen bowl, he displayed it on our mantelpiece as if it were a priceless artifact. He helped me rewrite my resume and practice for interviews, and within 6 months, I had a new job as a junior curator at a small art gallery, a job I actually loved. He was my biggest cheerleader, and under the warmth of his affection, I began to bloom. The gnawing anxiety in my chest started to recede, replaced by a tentative, unfamiliar feeling. Happiness. Of course, I had to introduce him to my family. I was terrified. Lucy, now a successful PR executive, was at her most charming. "He's wonderful, Ava. Absolutely perfect," she gushed after their first meeting. She was a little too enthusiastic. She'd hug him for a moment too long, laugh a little too loudly at his jokes, and touch his arm with a casual intimacy that made my skin crawl. "She's just being friendly," Richard would say when I'd voice my unease. "It's nice that she's so welcoming." I tried to believe him. I desperately wanted to believe that this one thing, this beautiful, precious thing that was my relationship with Richard, would be something Lucy wouldn't touch. I was so in love, so desperate for my new life to be real, that I ignored the blaring red flags. 2 years after we met, on a crisp autumn evening in the park where we'd had our first real date, Richard got down on one knee. He held out a simple, elegant ring with a small, sparkling sapphire. He said he loved me more than he'd ever thought possible, and that he wanted to spend the rest of his life making me feel as special as I was. I cried so hard I could barely get the word yes out. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had won. I had a man who adored me, a career I was passionate about, and a future that felt bright and full of promise. I was finally, unequivocally, happy. And that, I would soon learn, was the one thing my sister could never ever forgive. The wedding planning started in a flurry of joyful excitement. We decided on a small, intimate ceremony at a rustic country inn, the exact opposite of the lavish, attention-seeking affairs Lucy always favored. We were paying for it ourselves, a testament to our independence and shared future. I asked Lucy to be my maid of honor. It was the expected sisterly thing to do. I convinced myself that maybe, just maybe, my happiness would soften her. Maybe she had finally outgrown her cruel streak. It was a fool's hope. Her sabotage was, as always, insidious. She'd offered to help with vendors, only for my appointments to be mysteriously canceled. She'd give me her opinion on my dress, saying the one I loved made me look a bit washed out, planting seeds of doubt in my mind. She insisted on throwing me a bachelorette party, a wild night in the city that was completely out of character for me. I went along with it, not wanting to seem ungrateful. During that party, she encouraged me to drink far too much. The next morning, as I nursed a monstrous hangover, she sat on my bed, a look of faux concern on her face. "You were pretty wild last night, Ava," she said, shaking her head. "You were flirting with everyone. Richard is such a good guy. I just hope you realize how lucky you are." It was a classic Lucy move, creating a problem and then positioning herself as the wise, concerned counsel. The real betrayal, however, was happening in the shadows. I see it so clearly now, in hindsight. The late-night work emergencies Richard suddenly had, the way he started guarding his phone, the scent of a perfume on his clothes that wasn't mine, a perfume I later recognized as Lucy's signature scent. When I'd ask him if anything was wrong, he'd become defensive. "You're being paranoid, Ava. Everything is fine. Work is just stressful." He'd pull me close, kiss me, and tell me he loved me, and like a fool, I'd let my fears be placated. The discovery came 10 days before our wedding. The deposits were all paid. The invitations had been sent. My dress was hanging in my closet, a white shroud waiting for a life that was about to die. Richard had gone out for a run. His laptop was open on the kitchen table. A message notification from Facebook popped up on the screen. It was from Lucy. "Last night was incredible. Can't stop thinking about you. He has no idea, does he?" The world tilted on its axis. My breath caught in my throat, my hands shaking so violently I could barely control the trackpad. I opened their message history. It was all there. Months of it. Flirtatious texts escalating into secret meetings. Explicit photos. Declarations of a deeper connection they both felt. A connection that I, poor, fragile Ava, could never understand. They talked about me. They pitied me. Lucy would write things like, "She's just so naive. It's almost sad. She needs someone to take care of her, but she doesn't challenge you. Not really. Not like I do." And Richard agreed. "You're right. You see me in a way she can't. Being with you feels real." Each word was a physical blow. I scrolled back, my vision blurring with tears, and found the origin. It started shortly after our engagement party. Lucy had messaged him, ostensibly to talk about me. "I'm so happy for you both," she'd written, "but I worry about her. She's so dependent on you. It's a lot of pressure." She had expertly planted a seed of doubt, positioning herself as his confidant, the only one who truly understood the burden of loving someone like me. From there, she had masterfully reeled him in, playing on his ego, his insecurities, his desires. When Richard walked back in, sweaty and smiling, my world had already ended. I was just a ghost, staring at him from the ruins. I couldn't speak. I just turned the laptop screen towards him. The color drained from his face. The cheerful mask fell, revealing a hollow man beneath. He didn't even try to deny it. He just sank into a chair, his head in his hands. "Ava, I'm so sorry." "Sorry?" The word came out as a strangled whisper. "You're sorry?" What followed was a gut-wrenching, soul-destroying confession. He told me how Lucy had come to him, telling him she was worried about me, how she had slowly, deliberately seduced him. She told him that my love was childish, that my happiness was a fragile facade, and that he deserved a real woman, a woman as strong and ambitious as he was. She had preyed on his ego, making him feel like a hero for being with me and a conqueror for being with her. "She got in my head," he pleaded, tears streaming down his face. "She twisted everything. I know it's no excuse. I was weak. But I love you, Ava. I swear I love you. It was a mistake." But it wasn't a mistake. It was a campaign, a calculated, methodical demolition of my heart. I looked at the man I was supposed to marry, the man who had been my savior, and I saw a stranger, a weak, selfish man who had let my sister convince him that destroying me was a form of liberation for him. "Get out," I choked out. "Ava, please, get out." He left, and I was alone. The next 24 hours were a blur of phone calls, canceling the venue, the caterer, the florist. Each call was a fresh wave of humiliation, my voice cracking as I explained that the wedding was off. I lost thousands of dollars in non-refundable deposits, money Richard and I had painstakingly saved, money I now had to shoulder alone. When I called my parents to tell them, my mother's first words were, "Oh, Ava, what did you do?" Lucy, of course, played her part to perfection. She rushed to my side, her face a mask of sisterly concern. "I can't believe he would do this to you," she said, wrapping me in a hug that felt like a snake coiling around me. "Men are trash. You're so much better off without him." I wanted to scream. I wanted to claw her eyes out. But I was paralyzed, trapped in a state of shock so profound that my body could barely function. The grief was a physical weight, pressing down on me, making it hard to breathe. I spiraled into a deep depression. I lost my job because I couldn't get out of bed in the morning. The financial strain was immense, and within a few months I had to give up my apartment and move into the last place on earth I wanted to be, my parents' house, back into the room next to Lucy's. 2 months after my life imploded, Lucy made an announcement at a family dinner. She and Richard were officially a couple. She delivered the news with a carefully rehearsed speech about an unexpected connection and how they had found comfort in each other during a difficult time. She claimed it had only started after he and I had broken up, a lie so blatant it stole the air from my lungs. Richard sat beside her, looking miserable but compliant, a puppet whose strings she held firmly in her grasp. My parents, desperate to maintain the illusion of their perfect family, accepted it with a bewildering lack of questions. "Well," my father said, clearing his throat, "love finds a way, I suppose. We're happy if you're happy, honey." They looked at me, expecting me to echo their sentiment. I just stared at my plate, the silence my only protest. From that day on, I was treated like a landmine. Everyone tiptoed around me, their forced cheerfulness a constant reminder of my status as the family tragedy, the bitter spinster sister who couldn't hold on to a man. Lucy and Richard's relationship was a whirlwind, a public performance of everything we were supposed to have. They posted endless photos on social media, romantic getaways, fancy dinners, laughing with friends who used to be my friends. 6 months later, they were engaged. Lucy's ring was twice the size of the one Richard had given me, and then came the wedding planning, her wedding. It was to be the event of the year, a massive, extravagant affair at the most exclusive venue in the state. No expense was spared. It was a celebration not of love, but of victory. Her victory. Every detail, from the 10-tiered cake to the doves that were to be released after the ceremony, was a testament to the fact that she had won. She had taken my life, and now she was wearing it like a crown. The invitation arrived in a thick, cream-colored envelope, embossed with their initials in gold foil. My name was written in perfect calligraphy. For a moment, I considered burning it, but my mother insisted I go. "You have to, Ava, for the family. It's time to move on. Show them you're the bigger person." The bigger person. The words echoed in my mind for weeks. Being the bigger person had been my life's work. It meant swallowing my pain, validating Lucy's narrative, and pretending her poison wasn't still coursing through my veins. It meant watching her live my dream and applauding politely from the sidelines. The day of the wedding, I felt like I was getting ready for my own execution. I put on a simple, dark blue dress, a color of mourning. My reflection in the mirror was a stranger I barely recognized. There were dark circles under my eyes, and my face was thin and pale. The spark that Richard had once ignited in me was long gone, extinguished by a tidal wave of betrayal. Driving to the venue, every song on the radio seemed to mock me with lyrics of love and happiness. I felt a roiling mix of dread, anger, and a profound, bottomless sadness. I didn't want to go. I didn't want to see her in a white dress, walking towards the man who had held my heart in his hands and let my sister crush it. But I went. I walked into that grand ballroom and took my seat at a table in the back, a designated outcast. I watched the ceremony in a daze. Lucy was breathtaking, of course. She glided down the aisle, her smile radiant, her eyes locked on Richard. He looked handsome, but haunted. When he spoke his vows, his voice was hollow, his words lacking the conviction he'd had when he'd proposed to me. He was a man playing a part, perhaps even convincing himself it was real. Through the dinner, I mechanically pushed food around my plate. The clinking of silverware and bursts of laughter from surrounding tables, grating on my raw nerves. I watched Lucy hold court, flitting from table to table, the perfect hostess, the adoring bride. She and Richard would kiss on demand whenever a guest clinked their glass. Each time, it was like a hot poker to my gut. Then came the toasts. Her maid of honor, one of her sycophantic friends, gave a gushing speech about Lucy's loyalty and kindness. My father gave a tearful tribute to his perfect daughter, recounting a story from her childhood where she'd nursed a baby bird back to health, a bird I knew for a fact she had accidentally injured in the first place. And then a hush fell as Lucy's new husband, my Richard, stood up. He raised his glass. "To my wife," he began, his eyes finding hers. "To Lucy, you came into my life and showed me what passion and strength truly are. You challenge me, you inspire me, and you've made me the happiest man alive." That was it. That was the line that broke me. The lie was so audacious, so complete, that something inside me finally snapped. The years of being silenced, of being the bigger person, of absorbing her cruelty and the world's indifference, coalesced into a single point of unbearable pressure. It was no longer just about Richard. It was about the science fair project, the student council speech, the 1,000 tiny cuts that had bled me dry over a lifetime. It was about justice. My justice. As Richard sat down to thunderous applause, I stood up. I picked up my champagne flute, my hand surprisingly steady now, my mind icily clear. All the nervous energy had vanished, replaced by a cold, hard certainty. I walked towards the head table, my heels clicking purposefully on the marble floor. Every eye in the room followed me. I saw the flash of panic in my mother's face, the flicker of confusion on Lucy's. I reached the microphone, set up for the band that was to play later. I turned it on. The soft squeal of feedback momentarily silenced the room, and then I began to speak. I'd like to make a toast. I laid it all bare. I told them everything. Not just about the affair, but about the calculated, cold-blooded way she had engineered it. I told them about the texts, about her psychological warfare on Richard, about her feigned sympathy as she held me while I cried for a heartbreak she herself had caused. "This isn't a marriage," I said, my voice ringing with a conviction I hadn't felt in years. "This is a crime scene, and the bride is the perpetrator." I didn't stop there. The dam had broken, and a lifetime of suppressed truths came flooding out. I told them about my science project, about my stolen speech, about every little act of sabotage that had chipped away at my soul until there was almost nothing left. The room was utterly, deathly silent. Guests stared, their forks frozen halfway to their mouths. The wedding photographer had lowered his camera. This was a moment no one wanted to preserve. Richard had his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking. My father looked apoplectic. My mother was openly weeping, but not for me. For the scene I was causing, for the perfect family image I was shattering. And Lucy. Her face was a canvas of pure, undiluted fury. The ethereal bride was gone, replaced by a livid, cornered animal. Her eyes, those same eyes that had looked at me with fake pity so many times, were now burning with a hatred so intense it was almost visible. The mask was gone. This was her, the real her. Finally, everyone could see it. When I finished, there was no applause, just a thick, horrified silence. I placed the microphone back on its stand, turned, and walked away from the head table. I didn't look back. I walked past the stunned guests, past the 10-tiered cake, past the cages of doves that would never be released. I walked out of the grand ballroom, out of the opulent venue, and into the cool night air. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel happy. I felt empty, scoured out. The poison was out, yes, but the wound was still there, gaping and raw. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic. My parents have told me I'm dead to them. My actions were unforgivable, a disgusting, selfish display that humiliated the entire family. The few friends I had left have scattered, most of them siding with the pretty, popular girl who throws great parties and tells a convincing story about her crazy, jealous sister. Lucy and Richard are still married, at least for now. I hear they're trying to work through it, which I imagine involves a lot of therapy for him and a lot of expert gaslighting from her. She has painted me as an unhinged, bitter shrew who couldn't handle being dumped and concocted a fantasy of lifelong abuse to ruin her perfect day. Given her track record, many people believe her. I'm living on my own now, in a small apartment across town, working at the gallery again. I'm slowly, painfully, trying to rebuild. Some days I wake up and the weight of what I did is crushing. I alienated myself from everyone I know. I caused a public spectacle of epic proportions. I hurt people, even people who may not have deserved the full force of my wrath. But then, other days, I remember her face in that moment. The moment the mask fell away and the monster was revealed. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one being silenced. I wasn't the one cowering in the shadows. I was the one holding the truth. And for one terrifying, liberating moment, I made everyone see it. I destroyed her dream wedding, but she had already destroyed my life. So Reddit, I have to ask, AITA?